All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the chillingly fast descent into authoritarianism that we see in Samira Ahmed's novel Internment. And we're going to jump right into this, because the world Ahmed builds here, it's just a fascinating, albeit completely terrifying study of how a whole society can literally shift overnight.
So picture this for a second. I want you to imagine a ticking clock. Imagine the sheer, total panic of having to compress your entire existence, your memories, your daily essentials, into a single bag. And oh yeah, armed guards are standing right there in your hallway, watching your every single move. What do you grab? Actually, maybe the better question is, what do you leave behind?
Well, this completely impossible scenario, that's the actual harrowing reality for 17-year-old Lila Amin. She's the protagonist of this gripping narrative, and the story uses her perspective to really dig into these deep themes of fear, public complicity, and just the sudden, shocking loss of freedom. It brilliantly illustrates the core tension here. How on earth do you navigate a normal teenage life against the backdrop of a massively oppressive regime?
Let's get into Section 1, The World of Now. To really grasp Lila's plight, we have to look at the terrifying world building that sets up these incredibly high stakes. The author meticulously lays out a timeline showing exactly how democracy crumbles. It doesn't happen in one giant sweep, right? It happens in these rapid, systemic steps. In the novel's timeline, the ball gets rolling 2.5 years post-election. Then, 18 months ago, bam, a Muslim ban. A year ago, a registry based on census answers. 9 months ago, public book burnings. And then just 6 months ago, exclusion laws. The truly terrifying takeaway here is that authoritarianism creeps in through these seemingly normalized, bureaucratic steps.
By sharply contrasting the before with the now, the text highlights this tragic theft of normalcy for families like the Amines. Think about the before. Lila's parents hosted interfaith iftars. Her dad had a tenured job as a poetry professor. It was a normal high school life. But the now? Now there are strict curfews. Her father has been mysteriously fired, and their very existence is policed by these exclusion laws. It's just a stark, utterly devastating juxtaposition.
Which brings us to Section 2, Stolen Normalcy.
Against this sweeping backdrop of systemic oppression, we see the deeply personal, visceral toll it takes on a teenager who is, quite frankly, just trying to live her life. Everyday actions suddenly become acts of resistance. Lila's teenage rebellion is starkly juxtaposed against these authoritarian horrors. Something as simple as, kissing her boyfriend David becomes this dangerous, clandestine operation fraught with heartbreak. They were even suspended from school just for holding hands and kissing in the hallway. Basically, just an excuse for the authorities to separate them.
So their entire relationship is forced completely underground. Lila is sneaking out past a literal military-enforced curfew just to sit in a dark pool house with David. They have to use encrypted apps like Signal just to text each other safely. And even taking a walk around the neighborhood is shadowed by the very real threat of the Patriots Alliance. These are ordinary neighbors armed with flashlights and an app to snitch on people like Lila. Normal life doesn't just change, it literally has to be hidden.
Moving on to Section 3, Complicity and Silence.
Returning home from one of these risky outings to see David, Lila's micro-level rebellion ends up sparking this broader, super painful family conflict about survival. On one hand, you have Lila. Driven by fear and practicality, she wonders if they should have used taqiyya, which is the Islamic concept of concealing one's faith under extreme duress. Just lie on the census and stay safe. But her parents? They firmly believe in telling the truth. They absolutely refuse to erase their identity as Muslim Americans, insisting that giving up their truth is a defeat all on its own. It asks us a really tough question. Is it better to hide to stay safe, or do you hold fast to your truth even when it invites extreme danger?
During this intense debate, Lila's father quotes John Adams to explain how people will actually willingly trade their freedoms for a false sense of security. He asks, how does a democracy commit suicide? And wow, this brilliantly illustrates the novel's core warning about public complicity. Because think about it, the oppressive system only works because ordinary people, like the local baker or the school principal, just choose to look the other way out of fear, or maybe a sense of misplaced patriotism.
And that brings us to Lila's father, Ali Amin, and his poetry. The burning of his poetry book serves as this incredibly poignant motif throughout the novel. The author is showing us how authoritarianism always first tries to suffocate the voices of truth in clouds of smoke. But as his poem Revolution powerfully states, speak the truth while it is still alive, while lips cracked and bleeding can still move. It reminds us that words, simple words, are the absolute ultimate threat to a fragile, fear-based regime.
All right, let's look at Section 4, the 10-minute warning.
Those philosophical debates in the living room? Yeah, they are violently interrupted. Imagine looking out your front window and seeing the exclusion authority literally piling out of vans. They raid the Amin home, physically throwing Lila's father to the ground. And then comes the ultimate terror. They give the family a suffocating 10 minutes to pack their entire lives away. Just 10 minutes.
The visceral, ticking clock tension here forces Lila to make some completely impossible choices. I mean, step 1, just try to process the absolute shock of armed men in your house. Step 2, they must surrender their cell phones, which instantly severs Lila's connection to David and the entire outside world. Step 3 is frantically packing only clothes and bare necessities into a single duffel bag. And step 4, leaving behind her memories. She actually makes the heartbreaking choice to leave Fluffy, her childhood stuffed animal, sitting there on her unmade bed. It's such a haunting symbol of the innocence she's being forced to abandon.
But amidst all this nightmare, there's this deeply grounding moment of faith. Right in the middle of the sheer panic, her mother pulls the family into a tight circle and whispers the verse of the throne, which is this really powerful prayer of protection. They cling tightly to their faith and to each other, right as their physical safety and their home are quite literally ripped away from them.
Stripped of their voices, their agency, and their property, the Amin family is pushed out into the dark night, and they are bound for a place that chillingly, and I mean chillingly, echoes the absolute darkest chapters of American history.
Which leads us right into Section 5, Welcome to Mobius.
Arriving at their horrific new reality, the guards use these very sterile, bureaucratic terms like relocation to describe the Mobius camp. The commander even explicitly references Manzanar right to Lila's parents. This is a highly deliberate and terrifying echo by the author of the Japanese-American internment during World War II. It shows us exactly how history can repeat itself when citizens are deemed a threat for no other reason than their heritage or their faith. And once they're inside the camp, the psychological manipulation really deepens. Mobius is a completely fabricated community, and it's built entirely on fear. The camp director introduces minders. These are people chosen from the interned Muslim population itself, tasked with policing their own people. It is such a calculated move to break their solidarity. They are essentially attempting to enforce total complicity and docile compliance from the inside out.
But this terrifying scene leaves us with a truly powerful, unresolved image. Just as the director is up there demanding absolute obedience, a woman in the auditorium suddenly stands up and shouts at the minders, "Traitors! Fascists!" It's this sudden, electrifying spark of resistance right in the pitch dark.
And that defiant outcry, it leaves us with a deeply provocative thought to end our explainer on today. In a world demanding absolute complicity, a world where your very identity is criminalized and your community is literally locked behind barbed wire, how on earth will Lila find her voice to fight back? Seriously, what happens when the silenced finally decide to speak? Thanks for exploring this incredibly powerful narrative with me today. Keep asking those tough questions, and as always, keep seeking the truth.